my first experience of filmmaking was actually the pilot for A Way of Life. So before I went on to actually shoot the real film, I was asked for the UK Film Council, today known as the BFI Film Fund, to go off and just see what it would be like with a real film crew to shoot a couple of scenes from my film. And I remember getting to the end of the first shot that very first morning. It was the very first thing I'd ever filmed, and feeling so proud of myself, feeling so happy, and then realising that the whole room was completely silent and had come to a standstill, and I didn't understand why. And I looked at my first assistant director and said, well, everybody's looking at me. And he said, yeah, they're waiting for you to tell them what to do next. And I suddenly realised, my God, this machine does not move unless I am driving it. And so from that day onwards, I learned that I had to literally get with the programme and, you know, roll that machine. I pick my stories with love, to be honest with you. And what I mean by that is, on average, it still takes about 7 years to get a British movie, independent movie, off the ground. So if you attach yourself to an idea, a thought that you want to make into a movie and you don't love it, you're going to have to live with that movie for so long, not just perhaps maybe the 7 years that it takes you to make it, but also all of the time that you are actually in production, and then all of the time that you have to move with that movie, promoting it afterwards, and then of course it becomes part of your legacy. So in order to have the tenacity, and in order to kind of sustain the ride, and also in order to sustain all of the no's that you get and the rejection that you get along the way, you've got to pick something that you love and gives you a reason, I think, to hold on to it. So for me, I pick movies by working out what ideas, themes, characters might make my heart, might move me in some way. And I always believe that if a story moves me in some way, whether it makes me laugh, whether it makes me cry, then hopefully it will move elements of the audience that's out there as well. So that's how I try to pick, L-O-V-E. In terms of approach to filmmaking, you've got to be fit, to be honest with you, to make films, because you know, it's often approximately 8 weeks of your life where you're waking up very, very early. If you're directing the film, you're probably going to sleep very, very late, even though you know you shouldn't. You should get to bed early so that you can have a productive day the next day. Your mind is ticking over non-stop. You know, from the day you start pre-production to the day you probably finish the end of, you know, till delivery, really. There's never a day that goes by when you are not bombarded with questions and you have to know the answers. It's no good just saying, I don't know. So for me, you have to sort of be mentally fit and you have to be physically fit as well. So I try to eat well, you know, I try to get as much sleep as I can before I go into the pre-production stage. I like to, I'm not good at being creative while involving myself in another creative process. What I mean by that is I can't watch TV and I can't watch other films and I can't read books whilst I'm actually filming and telling my own story. I'm focused on the world that I've created and the world that I've submerged my characters into. So I'm pretty tunnel visioned. Family doesn't really hear from me very much. I've lost friends over it because it's impossible for me to kind of keep up those constant connections while I'm filming, but then suddenly once I've wrapped, everybody hears from me. And it's just about taking care of oneself. I'm also submerged in my cast and my crew, in the conversations that I have to have with them, because it's really important that they understand my vision so that I can create a shorthand with them, sometimes even prior to getting on set, that we're not having big, fat, long discussions, you know, at 8 o'clock in the morning when we've really only got till 9 o'clock to shoot a scene. It's not very long. So it's important that they get a sense of my vision prior. I do that through mood boards, which are then distributed to all of my heads of department, costume, makeup, production design, you know, all of those departments. I prepare with music. Sometimes it depends, you know, how well I'm working with the production designer, but I can share music with a production designer, I can share music with my DP. You know, there are all sorts of ways that you can communicate a sense of the film that you're trying to create, not just through speaking, not just verbally in many ways. So I try to bring them into my creative mind and my creative zone as much as possible, and of course listen to theirs as well, because the brilliant thing about collaboration is that when you're working with your heads of department, there are those magic moments where they take your vision, you know, 5 steps further than even you contemplated it could go. And those are the really wonderful moments. So taking care of self and submerging myself really in cast and crew, and doing my best to communicate vision. The biggest challenge I've faced so far, I think it's equal on every film, to be honest with you, which is financing still. We're at a place where, you know, the buzzword is still diversity, and we're still, you know, turning a corner when it comes to that word and kind of putting actions behind the words. And so with a director like me, it's not just a look. It's not just that we look different, but we also tell our stories through a slightly different gaze. And I think the biggest challenge really is gaining funding when, on the face of it, people are very, very open to the idea of diversity. But what you're often faced with is an idea that you're invited to the table but sort of still expected to speak with the same voice and the same language as those who have been privileged, who have had the sort of privilege of making films before. And of course, as a black female, I'm coming to it slightly differently. I'm coming to it with not just the unique vision of myself as a human being, but with my experience as being a black female. And sometimes getting that finance, because I see the world slightly differently to the world that I think financiers are used to, your stock standard filmmaker telling their stories from, can be difficult. So I still struggle, and people think with each film you make it gets easier. Actually, it gets harder. Whenever I'm asked about who the influences are on my career, it's so hard because it's not possible for me to list them all. There are so many. Of course, Ken Loach was a very, very clear influence on my career, and I think that's really evident when you look at A Way of Life. But filmmakers like Horace Ove, American female filmmaker Julie Dash has been a great influence on me. I mean, I really see her influence through my film Belle. Goodness, I'm constantly talking about Yentl and the fact that actually Barbra Streisand was the first woman who was so involved with the process of filmmaking that I came across as a 10-year-old girl because of the film Yentl, which I still love to this very day. So all of those people and 1,000 more, when you look at A United Kingdom, you can completely see the influence of David Lean in that piece of work. And so I'm continually looking back to the filmmakers that have inspired me, but also finding more. Finding those that I hadn't come across previously, discovering old films that they've made, and looking at how I can challenge myself to be better and as good as they were. I always say that the advice I would give to anybody starting out today is be tenacious. It's a long road. Pick projects you love, because as I've mentioned before, you know, they can take a long, long time to get off of the ground, and the road is kind of fraught with rejection and no's. I always say, remember that no is not a full stop when it comes to telling the stories you want to tell and people embracing those stories. It's a comma. It's time for you to kind of take stock and then move forward. Find people who trust you, trust in your vision to tell the story, and you know, dare to dream. Turn those dreams into goals. There's, you know, it's possible. Your dreams are possible in terms of the stories you want to make, and so it's about belief in self. It's also about working out the best way to communicate your stories that will also make them, in many ways, I think, attractive to financiers. And then the final thing that I would say is that don't wait. You know, the door does not open from the outside. You have to get out there. And as I say, today there are so many ways in which we can tell our stories, and there are so many platforms that we can use to tell them. that you need to find like-minded people and get going, make your short film. If you only have an iPhone to do it on, do it. You know, find a festival that will screen your film, use it as a calling card, use, you know, the various social media platforms as a calling card, and continually hone your skills in terms of learning how to tell stories and building on how you tell stories. The more films you make, the more experienced you'll be, and the more, what's the word, finessed you will become at telling those stories. So get out there and do it.